I think authenticity and transparency are very important to me personally, but I think they're important to most people. I think those two things, transparency and authenticity. If I as a food producer can articulate what I do and why I do those things, that is the fundamental basis of choice.
Good, bad, and everything in between, the food we eat changes our lives and the land around us. Learn and be inspired by stories of food, people, and the land we all share as we explore how food transforms. This is Alex McKiernan coming to you from the Bob Hines studio at Robinette Farms in Martell, Nebraska, and I'm excited to be joined by jack of all trades sandhiller Ben Gotschall. Ben owns and runs Clover Cove Ranch in Atkinson, Nebraska, along with his wife Tammy Austin, where they run a cow dairy and creamery, making products you can buy through them from Robinette and elsewhere, which we'll talk about. Clover Cove also has a buffalo operation selling meat. We're going to get into that as well. Ben is a fifth-generation Sandhills rancher, and he's been a dairyman for many years. He worked with his father's dairy herd, taught English to college students, managed a dairy operation in Missouri, worked at Branched Oak Farm back when they made cheese, started his own Davy Road Ranch north of Lincoln, moved his operation to Maine, where he managed the dairy and cattle at Wolf's Neck Center for Agriculture and the Environment, and now is back on his family's land south of Atkinson. Ben has a keen interest in agricultural and environmental policy and has contributed many hours to causes that he's passionate about. And Ben was a founding owner of Lone Tree Foods in Lincoln, which aggregates and distributes local food to wholesale buyers. And he's been part of the local food system in Nebraska for as long as we've been throwing around the phrase local food system. So Ben, welcome to Food Transforms.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So Clover Cove is your latest agricultural venture, but you've worked in agriculture for many years, which I mentioned. What's the common thread between all of those farm and ranch adventures?
Oh boy. Probably the most common thread would be grass-fed Jersey cattle. That's kind of what I got started in back in when I was a kid, and that's kind of what carried through as I grew older. And my father's operation started to change in the late 90s, and then when I went to Branched Oak Farm, that's what they were doing there, was grass-fed organic jerseys. And yeah, I would say that's kind of what's carried me through.
And what, most people I think listening who don't know a whole lot about ag or dairy might say, well, a dairy cow is a dairy cow is a dairy cow. You're saying Jersey. What's the significance of Jersey?
Well, they're just a specific breed of dairy cow. They're the smallest of the dairy breeds. They produce the richest milk. So their milk is more conducive to producing other products like cheese and butter. And that's kind of what they were developed for on the island of Jersey. They were never like a commercial fluid milk volume breed. They were more of a delicacy, food for the queen type thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And they're more conducive to making cheese? Is that because of the butter fat or something, or like what is the?
So they do have higher protein. So the casein is what goes into the cheese. But the butterfat content also can increase your cheese yield depending on what type of cheese you're making.
Okay. Now the girls and I took the girls for a trip up to Niobrara, and we stayed at your place a few weeks ago. Just sort of by coincidence, we ended up passing through there, and I gotta say, I have never seen so many cottonwoods, like big old cottonwoods.
Yeah.
Driving into your place, like all along those roads and ditches. There's like lots of water in the Eastern Sandhills. Is that the root of all those cottonwoods?
Yeah. So I like to tell people we live in the sweet spot of the Sandhills because we're east of the 100th meridian.
Mm-hmm.
So our rainfall, it's just a little over 24 inches.
That's a lot.
But we're right on top of the Ogallala Aquifer. We're right on top of the Sandhills Formation. We're actually on a recharge zone. So there's not a lot of separation there's no separation between surface water and groundwater in that area.
Yeah.
And so, the cottonwoods, many of which were planted by people, but they were native to the region. They just really took off in some of those areas, and so yeah, there's a lot of really cool cottonwood groves um, out in that area of Southwest Holt County.
What's your favorite place on your family's ranch?
Oh boy, um, I really like. We have several. We call them flow wells, artesian springs, fountains, sand points. They're also called where they're just pipes driven into the ground where the water flows out of them
Just bubbles out of the
perpetually.
ground. Yeah.
There's a really neat one west of Holt Creek, which flows through our ranch, um, where the overflow kind of feeds into uh, what I call the beaver pond. It's not a beaver pond now, but it was when I was a kid. So uh, that little watershed area, I think is one of my favorite places because it's kind of where you see the whole ecosystem come together with the wetlands, the waterway, the wet meadows, and the sand hills. You can kind of see it all at once. Plus,
Yeah.
the water tastes good.
Well, you mentioned and you specifically pointed out when we were going to be passing through, there's a well at this spot where it's just coming out of a pipe and into a stock tank that overflows, and there's a little copper cup hanging there. So you got to taste that because it's the best water, and the copper has antimicrobial, so it just hangs there year round. And other than I think I probably should have checked inside and not drank the spider or spider web that I did, but the water was amazing. The
Yeah,
taste was so good.
yeah, we're extremely fortunate to have such an abundance of high quality groundwater there. I mean, that is that's our unfair advantage, but it might be the biggest unfair advantage from a ranching standpoint that you can have.
I think so. Water's life. I mean,
Yeah,
we've had a good moisture year in southeast Nebraska, and this August we're almost at 5 inches,
yeah,
and they've come pretty easy, and it's just amazing. I'll take every single drop. It's amazing.
yeah. 3 months ago, it was touch and go there.
Yeah,
We didn't know if we were gonna have much of a grazing season. I didn't know if we were gonna be able to take in any cattle. Didn't know, a lot of folks around were like, "There's not gonna be any hay."
yeah,
There was fires, and then you get a few good rains, and it's completely different now.
you're right. So let's talk about the dairy products that you and Tammy make. What we've sold the Gervais a little bit. We have ghee. Are there other things that you guys make? Cheeses or?
Not at the moment. We have, back when we had Branched Oak Farm, we made some different types of cheese. We made some aged cheeses because they had an aging facility,
Right.
which we do not have at the ranch now. So we just kind of focus on those two
Yeah.
products.
And
Yeah.
so tell me, people have probably not heard. A lot of folks have not heard ghee and Gervais. Like,
Yeah.
simplify it for us.
Well, ghee is a clarified butter. It's basically the essential oil of butter. So it's butter. First, you separate the cream from the milk, then you churn the butter, and then you cook the butter at incrementally increasing heat because you don't want to scorch it, but
Mhm.
you cook it, and it cooks out. It removes all the moisture. It removes all the protein, all the casein, and it removes all the sugar, all the lactase or
Mm.
lactose. And so what you're left with is just the oil, just the fat. So you render it, I guess, is what you might say.
Okay. All right.
And then what you're left with is this beautifully golden cooking oil um, that can be used in place of butter. And we have folks that are lactose intolerant that can use it as butter because it doesn't have lactose in it. But it's just a great cooking oil. You can use it for different things. It's used a lot in traditional Indian and other Middle Eastern um, traditional dishes, um, but it it's good for baking and for pastries. It's good for sautéing vegetables, and it kind of behaves like coconut oil. It at room temperature it'll be a solid, but if it gets warm, it'll liquefy. It does not need to be refrigerated. You can refrigerate it as long as it's not contaminated with moisture or mold or something. It's just like coconut oil. You can just leave it on your kitchen counter and your shelf or your spice rack or whatever.
Right. When you clarify it, cook it, render
Yeah.
it, you drive out all that
Yeah.
water and
Yeah.
sugar,
Yeah.
and effectively it becomes stable. And
Yeah,
so
it's
this
just
can
like
just sit on
olive
the
oil.
counter.
Yeah, it's just like a bottle of olive oil or a bottle of any other cooking oil. You can just keep it in your counter for when you want to grab a spoonful for whatever you're making.
Right. And then tell us about Gervais, which I mentioned in a previous episode. I loved and tore our way through the little bit of yours that we have. But Gervais, people haven't heard that name either. What's that?
So Gervais, spelled with a G, Gervais, is a French cream cheese, and so it's we kind of co-opted that recipe, but we make it with uh, it's made with half and half. So you take half milk and half cream. So it's not a full cream cheese,
Mm-hmm.
but we spell it Jervais because it's made with Jersey milk.
Okay.
Plus, we don't want to violate any of the French
Sure.
laws of I can't remember what they call that, but anyways, it's different. But so it's kind of a it's a spreadable. It's not a hard cream cheese like you would think of like a block of Philadelphia.
Sure.
It's spreadable. Again, it's kind of, we like to use it as a staple. You can use it instead of butter. It's awesome on sweet corn.
Interesting. I haven't tried that.
You can, it's awesome on like butternut squash. It's awesome on baked potatoes. You can use it instead anything that you would put butter and or sour cream on.
Mm-hmm.
You can throw it on there. We've put it on, lasagnas and Mexican dishes and things like that. It's just kind of a versatile cheese that adds a distinct flavor and creamy texture to really anything you want to have that with. Or you can just eat it like ice cream with a spoon, and
that's about what I was doing.
That's what my dad used to do. We'd catch him in the kitchen eating it out of the container with a spoon like ice cream. But
that's great. Tell me more about Tammy. Did she grow up in agriculture?
Tammy did grow up on a pig farm in southeastern Nebraska, and so her family had raised hogs. They did farrowing, they did gestation. They sold hogs until that kind of went bad in the 90s.
Mm-hmm.
And then, when I met her back in 2011, she wanted to have her own heritage farm. She wanted to kind of raise different animals.
Mm-hmm.
And so the Jersey cow, she really liked the Jersey cows. And so she's really embraced the dairy part of things and the dairy product side of things. She's learned a lot, mostly by just doing it, and figuring out how to do it, how it works. Because when you're making cheese or you're making other artisan products, especially if it's made from milk that you produce on your own place, you just kind of have to learn how to make it. Because you can have kind of a base recipe, but that's what I think is so interesting about place-based local foods and artisan foods like that, is they're so one of a kind that it's almost like only one person can make them, and Tammy is the one person who makes them.
Right.
So every time you eat some of that Gervais or that ghee, I mean, that's Tammy. That's her skill and her knowledge and her style coming through that food. And so she's really done a good job, and I'm really grateful that she was so interested in that and so willing to learn. She's awesome, really. I mean, where would we be without those women that keep everything going?
The wonderful women in our lives. I agree completely. I remember years ago, I was talking with Kevin Loth and Shruth von Bozicom, and she's an amazing cheesemaker.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to help them kind of standardize, make some spreadsheets to, get her recipes in a way that, other people could use it. She could maybe run the creamery more shifts if other people could pick up on it. And so, I asked her to send me, the kind of cheese making thing. And she's like, I don't know, I'm not sure I can do that. And I was like, well, why don't you come over and we'll look at it? And, she had this book, and this is just Shrewth style too, but she had this book that was like, I can't standardize this. I can't turn this into a
Yeah.
spreadsheet. Like, she's an artist.
Yeah.
She's like truly just feels her way through making incredible cheese.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, like I said, there's a recipe, but there's also just that feel for what it is that you're trying to do.
Right.
And then knowing what it smells like, what it feels like, and then, what it tastes like, when it's fresh, just coming out of the vat, and then being able to say, okay, this is what this is going to taste like in 2 weeks.
Right. Project.
So yeah, it's really it's an acquired skill. It is an art. There's some science involved though, but
Sure.
but yeah, and you mentioned Shrewth. I learned a lot from Shrewth because she was making cheese at Branched Oak Farm when I first started there. Her and Krista Dittman were sharing that space for a little while before they built their creamery, and so I even just watching how she did things, not even like having her directly show me. I learned a lot from both her and Krista, and so did Tammy.
A dry fall leads to a lot of grasshoppers. Their eggs survive when it's really dry. And we had a very dry fall last year, and there are a lot of grasshoppers right now. When I'm driving through the pastures in my four-wheeler, grasshoppers are constantly hitting me. In addition to everything you're learning about Ben Gotschall and Clover Cove Ranch, you should also know that he's a poet, and he has a collection of poems called Where It Happened that he published in 2008. And Ben's got a poem called Grasshoppers. They arrive overnight from nowhere, fallen angels, crawling everywhere, mandibles, scouring fence posts as if to devour bare wood. Each destroys 10 times what it eats, the choicest morsels of tender green shoots until pastures lie in ruin. Cattle ship out to feedlots to eat grain like birds, and coyotes glut grasshoppers more than they can hold. The creeks sink deeper into their beds. Burning wind blows sand in a slow, steady casting out of the brittle hills. The rancher turns his face to the sky. Wrinkles crease his forehead like shadows of barbed wire across bare, inedible ground. He prays for mercy's cool drops to fall. Afternoons, clouds gather, bellies brown and swollen. From them a darkness descends, the air alive. With flight, they light on fences, in trees. Evenings moan, a death song of wings. So you guys are also selling buffalo.
Yes.
How did you come to have bison buffalo at your place?
Well, they were there. So we moved back to Nebraska in December of 2023 after my father passed away. And he had this herd of bison that he'd started, I believe it was back in 2014. He started with a kind of a core group that he got, and they kind of just doubled every 5 years until we came back, and the first plan was to just kind of wait a few months, get through the winter, see how they did, and then probably sell the herd down, or maybe even get rid of the entire herd. But that first winter, we kind of saw what it was like managing them side by side with cattle, and they just kind of grew on me. And Tammy and I had a lot of conversations about, is this something we want to do? We don't really know a lot about this. Should we try to do something new like this, or should we stick with what we know? And it ended up, we just kind of decided that we kind of just fell in love with them. We kind of just started to like them, and they're not raising buffalo is not for everybody. They're not the same as cows, and you kind of have to raising buffalo is a great uh, forced exercise in stoic philosophy because you really have to face the fact that you can't control
Mm,
what they do. Even the best fences that you can build are just a suggestion to them.
right.
So you have to manage what goes on inside the fence to make them want to stick around.
Right. Yeah, that's that. My main question was going to be about management. Like this
Yeah.
is very different, and you're pretty hands off. I understand when it comes to managing them. You're not putting in ear tags or branding, or giving lots of vaccinations or sorting animals off and selling them. This is very hands off. It's not what people would imagine when they hear ranching. Um, Talk a little bit about that management approach and how it differs from cattle.
Well, yeah. So yeah, but it is kind of the sexy thing to say that you manage, with if you're a regenerative cattle rancher that you manage your cattle like the bison, but um, but then on the same side of things, you see all these buffalo ranchers that are basically managing their buffalo like cattle. Like you said, they're tagging them, running them through chutes, finishing them on feedlots, and but yeah, so we very hands off. We don't ear tag. We don't round up and have a yearly vaccination or sort. The whole herd stays together all the time, all ages, all stages, from the biggest 1 ton bull down to the littlest baby calf, and so they're kind of like a big family. Um, and so they have buffalo are very social animals, and so they respond to the group dynamic. So we basically manage the herd through group dynamics. So we try to keep a balance, or what we see as a balance. We're still learning this, but how observing how they behave, observing how they kind of what makes them seem to be the most happy and calm and least stressed. And so one of the first things we did, or that we kind of observed, was that we have way too many mature bulls in this herd. Like when we got there was like in a herd of um, 150 total animals, there was like 14 mature, like I'm talking over 5-year-old bulls,
Mm,
and there was a couple in there. There was one that was probably over 20,
wow.
and the thing that happens when you have that many mature bulls is um, they want the younger bulls coming up want to start. They see those big old bulls and they're like, we can't compete with these guys. We're just gonna we're out. Like we're gonna go somewhere. We're
Right.
gonna we're gonna go,
Find a new group.
and that's how bison migrate or behave in wild settings, or the younger males go out and find a new territory, and then they come back and try to steal away some females to go start a new herd with them. And so we were seeing that, like these young male bison were just trying to they were just they wanted to go anywhere but the ranch that they were supposed to be on. So you could look at that and say, oh, you've got too many young bulls. They're the problem. Get rid of them, butcher them. But we ended up that was the only time we've ever loaded bison on a trailer. We actually sorted off all the old bulls and rounded them up and sold them to a ranch in Wyoming that was, you know, basically using them for hunting.
Hmm.
Um, so and not the best thing that we would want to do with them, but it allowed us to kind of take a breath. It changed the herd dynamic immediately.
Hmm.
Like um, then we had older females, because they're a very matriarchal. Uh, Bison are a matriarchal society.
Hmm.
The older females have great value in the herd, and so they kind of decide when and where the herd moves, and they show the rest of them where the gates are and where the best places to bed down are. But we had a lot of those too, and some of them were kind of spoiled because in his later in his life, Dad kind of didn't really manage the herd so much. They were kind of more of a hobby for him.
Mm-hmm.
So we had some renegades that would just go wherever they wanted to. They didn't want to leave the ranch necessarily. They just wanted to go wherever they wanted to.
Right.
And so we ended up we harvested a few of those, and then after that, it's been a night and day difference in the way the herd behaves. They move together as a group. There's no like split off factional groups that want to quit the country,
Mm-hmm.
and they just seem so much calmer, and they kind of behave more like a herd organism rather than a collection of a bunch of individuals with their own agenda.
Right. And yeah, you talk about the social nature of bison and cattle, goats, any ruminant really. They're very
Yeah.
social animals because safety's the herd and,
Yeah.
and the group. In a previous episode, talking about our grass finished beef and what we do, Chloe and I talked about my least favorite job, which is taking animals to slaughter.
Yeah.
Because you load them up in this trailer they've never been on or haven't been on in a long time, and you drive them down the highway, and it's loud and it's weird and different and vibrations and sounds and no grass. It's all these things that are stressful. And then you take them to a slaughterhouse where, when animals are stressed out, they'll excrete those stress hormones in manure and in urine. And so they show up at this slaughterhouse, and I assume they can smell death. Like they just know this is not right.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be here. And they're immediately stressed out. And I would love to just harvest them here off of pasture.
Yeah.
And this is basically what you do with the bison, right? Will you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we do field slaughter, field harvest. We have two marketing channels for that. Two places where they go. The first one is we work with an outfit called Wild Idea Buffalo Company out of South Dakota. It was started by a guy named Dan O'Brien. He wrote a book about it called Buffalo for the Broken Heart. I think he also has a book called Wild Idea. But anyway, we were actually the first ranch that they used their USDA certified mobile slaughter unit. So it's basically a semi that has a skinning cradle and a rail, and then a refrigerated freezer space in the front. And they bring that out, and they use basically just a pickup, a 1-ton pickup with a bale bed, and the bale bed's been modified so it has chain hooks on it. And so we just drive out into the herd with that pickup. The shooter is the driver, and then I'll go along with him to kind of, decide which ones we're gonna take out. And the USDA inspector rides in the back seat right behind the shooter.
Oh wow!
And so we go out in the field. We pick the one we want. We point out the one we're gonna harvest to the inspector. She has to say, okay, that's a healthy animal. That's right. I see what you're doing here, and then we shoot that one. Quick kill shot to the head. They're from close range, and then we chain the legs, hoist them with the arms on the bale bed, and have them back to the trailer within minutes. So
this is they're with their social group,
yeah,
the herd, and in a place that they know,
yeah.
And then you have a very trained professional shooter.
Oh yes,
that can put this animal down without having it suffer.
Yeah, and we only take the shots. When you only take the good shot, you're naturally going to take the shot where the animal is relaxed. I mean, they're just kind of standing there hanging out. They're not running away from you. They're not trying to get away from you. That's the whole point of it. Is they're standing there, usually facing you head on, just kind of in a, just chewing their last bite of grass.
And this is in contrast to the way that the vast majority of slaughter happens in this country, which is animals removed from an environment that they're comfortable with, removed from a group that they're comfortable with, and put into some sort of system, whether it's massive, Cargill slaughter plant or some local plant like we take ours to that's just a few head a day they might slaughter, where all the smells and sounds and cues that an animal would key into are negative
Yeah.
and stressful.
Yeah.
And I guess the challenge is that the way doing it right, and what I think is right, the way you're doing it, is expensive.
Yeah.
You know, our system is built around making cheap food, not making ethical food that takes care of the animal and the people and the land. Because we haven't talked about the people who work at these plants either, but it's a pretty difficult environment to be employed in. And this is,
Yeah.
I don't know if the folks who come out to your place, the shooter and those other, if they would call it rewarding, but I bet they would feel more like they're showing more respect to that animal.
Yeah. Most of the crew that work in the trailer, are native.
Mm.
It's a South Dakota based business, Rapid City based business, and we'll do they'll do a little ceremony at the beginning of the day, with sage, um, and if they invite us to invite me to take part in it, I will. But so there is that kind of. I don't think they're doing that at the local JBS or Tyson plant.
Probably not.
And yeah, and the shooter, we've had a couple of them. Yeah, they're people that take pride in their job. They want to do the best job. I mean, it's like they have a personal connection to it. It's not just this thing they have to do that becomes repetitive. Each time they go out there, it's like, okay, how can we do the best job this time?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just kind of like that. I have a good feeling, and we've had visitors come out. We've had customers come out, and ride along, in the kill truck, and I haven't had any of them say, "Boy, I don't like this." They almost all of them too. We haven't had any of them say, "I don't like this." They almost always say, "This gives me a good feeling. I feel good about this. I feel good about eating the meat that comes out of this process."
Right. And so that's Wild Idea, and they harvest at your place, and then they take and package that meat with their brand on it. But you mentioned another way to do that.
So then there's our marketing channel, which you participate in, and I do that myself. So I just usually go out with the tractor that we use to feed them hay in the wintertime, whatever time of year it is. And so I'll take them a bale of hay out and spin it out, kind of string it out along and kind of spread them out. That gives me an opportunity to look them over. Usually I've scouted the herd a few times in advance of a slaughter date. So I have at least if I don't know exactly which one I'm going to take out, I have a kind of a list in my head of, okay, these three, if I get a good presentation on one of these, this is the one I'm going to do. And so depending on what the product is might influence which one. But also it's kind of like whatever, whichever opportunity presents itself.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because, the more I think that I learn, I'm not sure if I'm actually learning this or not, but the more that I think that I'm learning about the herd dynamic, the right individual to take out of the herd will present itself. I'm not saying like it's like some like mystical, like it's gonna like walk out on its own and like stand there for you.
Right.
But you will be able, if you observe the herd, you will be able to see which animals probably the herd could do without. And knowing the herd and spending time with them and seeing how they interact and just kind of knowing what age and what stage the different animals are in helps. And so I'm trying to learn that. It's definitely a skill that I'm sure that the native tribes of this country knew very intimately, pre-European contact, and it's a shame that so much of that institutional knowledge was lost, with the pandemics of the smallpox and things. Because man, the knowledge they must have had about bison management on the plains, that I wish we had that knowledge today.
When you raise livestock on the landscape, predators are a real concern. And there are times when a predator's behavior really changes what happens on your place. Ben's got a poem called Daybreak. Slickered under rain, I stand in what was once a fence corner, the box anchor broken, railroad ties splintered like shims. The hackles bristle on the neck of my dog, whose silence says nothing but fear. What must have been what drove the cattle through the barbed wire. I look down at what remains of the fence, trampled by hooves into the ground, in the mud, a single cat track bigger than my hand. Morning sun buds over the rim of cattle-scattered hills. The rain quits. The dog whines. My finger traces the edge of the print, deep, round, and dry. I don't know how many times you said the word observe, 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 and the best agriculturalists that I've met, especially when it comes to livestock, it is so much about just understanding behavior and what are they telling you. I think I've heard people say something along the lines of like, horses don't lie, cattle don't lie, a bison can't lie to you. Like they show you, you just have to learn how to see it, and that comes through really close observation.
Yeah, you have to spend that time and have that mindset of, I'm going to go learn something today.
Yeah, right. And then so the ones that you harvest, you then take to a local packing plant in Nebraska.
Yeah, we're very thrilled to be working with Burdett's Custom Meats in Ord.
Okay.
It truly is it's a two-person, it's a young couple, Cole and Shelby. They're great. I think they're a passport destination for folks who maybe do that. But yeah, they're great. We take the bison there. They process it. They also sell the meat through their little storefront. So depending on our demand and their demand, we might split one with them. And so it's very, very convenient, a much different relationship than I've had with any other processor.
And this is in Ord, Nebraska, so just a little way south of you guys.
Yep.
And you can't do this with cattle, though, right? Like
No.
I couldn't go out in pasture and put an animal down and take them to a slaughter plant.
You could, but you couldn't sell the meat.
Right.
You could, if you were doing it for yourself, you could do that. But yes, bison are, I think the official phrase is a non-amenable species, which I think just means that they're considered wild game. You can get them USDA certified, and you can, that's what we do with Wild Idea, because that meat crosses state lines.
Right.
It goes back to South Dakota. You can get them USDA certified, and we have another local locker that's USDA, but they would have to write. It's just like the difference between pork and chicken. It's a different species. They have to have a different production day. They have to have a different process, and so finding a processor that will do bison USDA certified, they're just like, well, you don't have the volume. You're doing 1 or 2 a month. That's not enough for us to change our whole system to accommodate that low of a number of animals. But Cole and Shelby, where they love the product, they're using the product, selling the product. That relationship is just, it's very valuable to us, and we really appreciate it.
Well, it's interesting the word you use, system. The system can't accommodate, and I feel like in where we are in agriculture and maybe everything right now is we have a system. Does your thing work with the system? No, then go away.
Yeah.
As opposed to what you said with the Burdettes in Ord, they like the product. It begins with the product, with the relationship with the customer, and how do we make a system that can deliver this product that people want and that we feel good about
Yeah.
and supports our values, as opposed to, no, we have a system. How can life around us accommodate the system?
Yeah.
So when it comes to systems, when it comes to, these sorts of things, you've been involved in farming, ranch, food policy in lots of different ways. And I'm just wondering, what do you think are your underlying values that motivate your work in policy?
I would say in terms of policy, or, just, I think authenticity and transparency are very important, um, to me personally, but I think they're important to most people who, especially now that are interested in eating differently. I don't want to say eating healthy, although it is healthier, not just bodily health, but healthy for the economy, healthy for community. I think those two things, transparency and authenticity. If I, as a food producer, can tell people, can articulate what I do and why I do those things, then that's the basis of that is the fundamental basis of choice. So then that's what I give to my consumers. They choose to give me their business or not. And I think we just need more of that in not just the food system in this country, but in everything, in politics, in education. Here's why we're doing this. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we want to do. Here's why we're doing it. And just, if that's a real thing that people can understand, and there's no like hidden agenda or nastiness or, personal aggrandizement behind it, uh, so much could be, so much can be done, to build the word you said earlier, relationships, because that's what it's really all about. Um, you know, if you're in local food like you and I, are doing, it's all about relationships. Because if we don't have those relationships that sustain us, we don't have anything. Because that's the only advantage we have. That's over, you know, the Tysons of the world and the JBSs of the world, and you know, the big the big corporations that have all the money and power. They don't have those relationships. They would love to have them, but I think that it's the nature of the beast. It's hard to have a relationship with someone that you don't know, that you don't see, that you're not accountable to, that you can't tell your story to, that doesn't hear where you're coming from.
Right. That doesn't see when you're down. I have this very vague and foggy memory. It's like snippets from a dream where you were sitting to my right, and I think there was a window behind you, and we were talking. And it was less than a week after my injury in January of 2014, and I was paralyzed from the waist down, and I was in a hospital bed in Madonna Rehab Hospital in Lincoln. And I don't remember because of my concussion and all the drugs I was on for pain. I just have this one image, and I don't even know if it's accurate. And we didn't know each other all that well at that point, but you came to see me, and I appreciate you doing that. Do you remember that? What do you remember from that visit?
Yeah, I remember that. So yeah, after your accident, I yeah, we didn't know each other very well. I think we'd seen each other at some things. I think I'd met you before that, but like our paths didn't cross that much. Um, but I remember hearing about it, and where it happened on that stretch of 77 there, and I was like, man, I have driven that exact same road so many times, and and that could have been me. That could have been someone someone that I someone that could be any of us at any time. And that's kind of the nature of life, I guess, is you don't know what's going to happen or when. But yeah, I just thought, man, if that happened to me, what would I want? Well, I would want people to come visit me, and not treat me like I was fragile or whatever. Just So I worried that it was too soon to come visit, because it was pretty recently. Um, but yeah, I'd written a book of poetry back, oh gosh, back in 2007. And so I thought, well, I'll give him this book if he likes it. If maybe he can read it. Um, but yeah, I was there. I spent some time there. You were totally out of it. Like, I don't. I mean, I think you looked at me, but like, I couldn't tell if you could see me. Like, yeah, you were in tough shape that
Wow.
day. But I just, I talked to you for a little bit. I might even read you a poem. I can't remember. I might have just told you about the book and left it on the bedside table. But yeah, that was. And then you, years later, when right after my father died, sent me a really nice card, um, kind of offering some encouragement and stuff, and so that that really meant a lot to me, and one of the reasons that we came back to Nebraska, was that connection, that relationship, with the people here, and yeah, you were part of that, so.
Yeah, I didn't remember that you came to see me. And I know it was soon after just because how foggy the memory was when it came back. But when I moved back home after a couple months at Madonna, um, I was going through all the things that people had brought me, and I came across your book, and I asked Chloe, "How did I get this?" And she said, "He came to see you. It was real early." And I have this vague memory that came back to me at that point. And and yeah, you'd published this book of poetry where it happened, and you gave that to me. And I was just curious, do you still write?
Yeah, yeah, I'm not. One of the best pieces of advice, given someone's ever given to me was, William Clefcorn, who was
Mm.
no longer with us, but he was the state poet of Nebraska for many years, and he was my poetry teacher at Nebraska Wesleyan. And he, I think it was on one of my last portfolios, with one of his classes, he wrote on the back of it, he's like, "You should continue to write, but if you don't, someone should hit you over the head with a fender brace, but don't be obsessive, don't be compulsive about it." And so, yeah, I continue to write, and but I'm not one of those writers that gets up every day and chains myself to the desk and puts in the hour or whatever. I wish I was. I wish I could do that, but I'm more of a, if something strikes me, I just record a little snippet on my phone, and then might revisit that later, or journal a little bit, and then yeah, some of those things become poems, and uh, yeah, I have a couple projects going on right now.
When those snippets occur to you, is there something that motivates you, something that you see, something that you feel that draws that out?
I would describe it as just an overwhelming feeling of, hmm, I don't want to say, yeah, an overwhelming feeling of, this is something that's beautiful, or this is something that's significant, and I don't want to forget it. I don't, I want to share it. I want to share it, even if it's only with my future self, even if nobody reads it. I want to know. I want to be able to look back at this moment, or revisit this image or this time again later, because we're given these moments in life where there's beauty, or maybe ugliness. Maybe we should remember that too. But we're given these moments in life, and they're valuable. And I guess my writer's urge is to preserve that value somehow, and usually it's through poetry.
Food transforms everything around us. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe, post glowing reviews, and tell your friends. Visit robinettefarms.com today for food and info. Join us next time, and remember, food is a gift. Enjoy it.
I get kind of emotional talking about that kind of stuff. I don't know. Maybe it's because I care about it. I don't know.